You know, folks, what a week it has been to be a wrestling fan. I mean, in just the past 8 days, it seems this generation's answer to WCW and ECW or the AWA, whatever you want to call it, have pretty much, how should I put it, gone for desperate actions. Now, you all know I talked about the whole scum and situation in ROH and how I felt it's nothing more than their version of the NWO, despite what people may say. But tonight, as if people couldn't say that Aces and Eights was nothing more than a knockoff of NWO, tonight was the icing on the cake. Yeah. Tonight was the icing on the cake, folks. You know why? Because apparently, what everybody pretty much knew already, what everybody pretty much knew from the very start, if you will, TNA unveiled tonight. What did they unveil? Oops. Something that we all pretty much knew already. And that was the fact that Bully Ray is part of Aces and Eights. Yeah, it's true. But to even put more icing on the cake, they decided to reveal that he's also the president. So you're telling me that Bully Ray is not only part of Aces and Eights, but he's the president. And then what he says after the match, people pelting the ring with trash, as if you couldn't say Aces and Eights was nothing more than an NWO ripoff. I don't know what you can. The same with Scum and ROH. It's like both companies are so desperate. I mean, I can understand ROH doing something like this to get themselves attention. But TNA? Seriously? I mean, just because you guys are going on the road doesn't mean you have to do this crap. I mean, what do you think this is going to do? Get you a lot of attention? More attention than you obviously been wanting? What, enough for bigger venues to open up for you? You know what's going to happen, TNA, unless you really try to make this more original than what obviously could be. What's going to happen is you're going to lose viewership. You know, a lot of these newer, younger wrestling fans over the past decade or so, the past 15 years, if you will, past 15 years plus, if you will, they don't understand, obviously, what people like me, why people like myself, the Schleg Daddy, the Off the Rope Show, the British Fist, everybody that's been a wrestling fan for 20 to 30 years, much longer than them, the reason why we always look at this, at factions like Aces and Eights, at like tonight with factions like Aces and Eights, and factions over a week ago like Scum, and their expansion, if you will. Nobody, you see, these fans of a decade, of just a little over a decade, if not a little beyond 15 years, they don't get it. They don't get it. We've seen this before. We, as wrestling fans, have lived this before. We know pretty much what the damn results are going to be. Why do you think when they did the whole Nexus deal, and they had John Cena being forced into the group, being forced to be a part of Nexus, why do you think people tuned out WWE at that time? They knew what was going to happen. The thing is, after tonight, if this doesn't confirm that Aces and Eights is nothing more than TNA's version of the NWO, and that they're probably just doing this because they're going on the road and they're hoping it's going to garner a lot more attention, they're wrong. Now, I will admit, the only original thing that they did do was this past weekend, when they invaded an indie show. But you know what? That was River City Wrestling? But you know what? Even that wasn't original, because that was pretty much a take off the Nexus, and even now the Shield invading FCW/NXT. It's like whoever's in charge doesn't get it. They just don't get it. You could pretty much... I understand that maybe they look at all this newer, younger generation of fans, and they say, hey, these guys have never experienced these invasion-like angles, these NWO-like angles before. But what they need to realize is these young fans are getting into wrestling because us, the older fans, us, the long-time term fans, help get them into it, pretty much. And in a sense, we already know and seen these situations before. And then add in the fact that you might even add Brooke to the stable, because from what people have said, they saw her smile a little bit and then cry. It's like, I don't get it. I don't get it. All right? This is why TNA is losing viewership at times. A lot of, like I said, a lot of fans, a lot of long-time fans like myself, we've seen this before. We know what the result's going to be. It's just like in a comic book. We've seen it. We've seen certain story arcs or storylines. Like what's going on in Sonic right now. There's a lot of fans that are tuning out the comic, not just because of all the different situations going on, but because they've seen this story arc almost similarly in other stories, in other medias. They know what the result's going to be, whether they like it or not. The point is, a lot of people, here's the point. A lot of people on Facebook pretty much didn't watch Lockdown. I watched bits of it tonight through a stream. Through a free live stream, if you will. And, I admit they got great matches. And potentially the card's great. And, perhaps all the matches before the, last three, the main events, if you will. The second main event, the Lockdown, 1 out of 3 isn't a good sign. 1 out of 3 is not a good sign. Especially the way you end your first cage match and your last cage match. It's like it's like you potentially had a great card, and maybe in the minds of a lot of these newer fans you did, but in the end, all you did was drag it down with the ending. Now I know a lot of people may say that's not the case and it was good. Hey, you're right, maybe it was. But you know what? You gotta ask yourself. You gotta ask yourself as longtime fans too. If not short-term fans or whatever, fans for the past decade or so or 15 years, you gotta ask yourself, was it worth it to know what the result was going to be in the final match? In the Bully Ray Jeff Hardy match. Was it worth it in the end? I mean, what are we going to see next? Bully Ray, what are we going to see next? Next, them stealing the idea of an imposter Hardy or something like that, coming out and attacking someone close to Jeff and doing the whole Hardy's going to become the new Crow Sting deal? Look, potentially from what I saw, the card was, up until the cage matches obviously was good. I didn't see the cage matches, and, quite honestly from what I read, apparently the only one that was good out of those 3 cage main events was the Lockdown. The other 2 were not. Maybe I was wrong. To me, it's like TNA is desperate to get people to watch the product, come to the live events and stuff. Then you know what? You better find a way to make this more original and less predictable than what we already have seen with Aces and Eights, or else you're going to start losing viewership just like that. Because all TNA is becoming, or you're becoming TNA, is this generation's version of WCW, and all Aces and Eights become is your version of the NWO. And there's a lot of longtime fans like myself that have seen it before, and we know the result. This is why a lot of longtime fans like myself favor the Shield over Aces and Eights. This is why we favor the Shield angle in the WWE over Aces and Eights. Because with the Shield, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how they're going to book them. But with Aces and Eights, obviously, we do know the answer. So folks, what a week to be a wrestling fan.